Thanks for joining us today on the second half of this two-part webinar series where we're going to look at optimizing component design for metal 3D printing. For those of you who weren't able to join us last week for the first part of this series, let's go through a quick recap of what we're looking to accomplish. I've got this old car that we're looking to swap a new engine into, and as part of this process, we've got to tackle the lack of basically power steering on this new motor. This motor does not have a hydraulic power steering pump, and so in the first half of this series, we walked through how to take scan data from an idler pulley off of this engine and start to convert that into solid geometry in SolidWorks that we can use to print a design for mounting our power steering pump. Ultimately left off last week was we had taken this part, we had modeled up a little bit of data using that original scan, and then we had used topology simulation to start to refine and remove material while maximizing the stiffness of our part. Picking up where we left off, today we're going to start by looking at considerations for 3D printing. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is material considerations. In our case, we know that we're going to have to mount this pump and this bracket onto the engine of a car, and there's a lot of vibration and heat and stress and strain that this bracket's going to be under. And so for us, we decided to go ahead and print this out of metal. And so we used the Markforged Metal X, and we decided to print this part out of 17.4 pH stainless steel. Stainless, part of the reason is I just didn't want rusty car parts under the hood, but I also like the look of that raw material. And so I thought it would be cool to go ahead and print this out of stainless to get both the strength and material properties for corrosion resistance and things like that. So once we knew what material we were going to use for this model, the next thing we had to decide is, can we print our existing geometry, basically what topology has given us, and will that lead to a high quality print? There's a lot of things to consider when it comes to the quality of the print, everything from the geometry to the materials to the printing technology that you're using. And in this case, what we wanted to do was make sure that we got a really nice looking high quality print that wasn't going to have any issues or, lead to a bunch of post-processing requirements. So I'm going to segue right back into topology optimization because when we initially started running topology, we were getting results like you see on the right. For those of you who aren't familiar, topology allows you to remove a whole bunch of material, basically tell SolidWorks, I want to try and remove as much material as possible, but also try to maintain certain stiffness or strength requirements. And it'll show you where material can be removed. And so we were winding up with kind of these very organic shapes that kind of looked pretty neat, but could be challenging to print because of all the voids and cavities and really thin-walled areas that would require a lot of support or could trap support that you wouldn't be able to remove from that part during post-processing. So we wanted to get a little bit of control over what that design looked like. And so what I want to do now is walk you guys through a series of options in topology that you can use to gain control over the geometry that topology spits out. So here in SolidWorks, if we take a look at the topology study that we've got set up, there's a couple of manufacturing controls that we can enable. And one of the big ones that you're going to want to know right off the bat is preserved region. If you add a preserved region, this allows you to specify geometry that topology should not interfere with. You basically select faces on the model, and then you also specify a depth to create a region that topology will not remove any material from, and thus lets you retain critical geometry, whether it's for strength requirements or maybe just because it'll look a little better if the software doesn't go and remove that geometry from your model. So we specified a number of faces here that we wanted to keep, and that helped us gain a little bit of control over the final shape of the part. Once we had our preserved region specified, the next thing we looked at was thickness control. So thickness control allows you to specify a maximum and minimum region thickness, and that will prevent this thing from looking like a spider web where it gets really, really stringy and there's all sorts of small support members kind of running throughout this part, or from just creating really, really chunky areas where it's one massive region and there's not a whole lot of material being removed. So this allowed us to kind of fine-tune the thickness of every region throughout the part. Now, one more control option that I don't have in this particular study, but I did find really useful for 3D printing is actually demold direction. If you're using topology, you can specify a demold direction, which allows you to more or less orient the voids that are created within this part. Topology loves to cut out internal regions, and if you're going to mold something, or in our case print something, you want to be able to control where those regions are at. If it's for mold purposes, it's because obviously that part needs to release from the mold cleanly. For printing, we want to control this so that we can determine where supports are going to be created. We want to try and either minimize the amount of support that we need or control where that support is added, either for material usage purposes or because it'll minimize the amount of post-processing we have to do. So with demold direction, you can basically specify something like a midplane where it will kind of remove cavities out towards the side or up and down throughout the part. In this case, if I select midplane, so what we can do is we can select an edge here, and then when we go ahead and confirm that, you'll see that 2 arrows pop up. So now where we're removing material, it's going to try and pass that cavity all the way through the part from top to bottom, and that will minimize the amount of support that we need for this part. Now ultimately, when topology spits out results, and you guys saw these in the previous webinar that we did in this series, it's not going to be perfect. You do get a lot of kind of jagged regions and maybe some smoothing that needs to take place. And you do have some control over this. If you edit the definition of the result plot, you can go in here and actually slide this little slider from either heavy to light. And what it does is it starts to remove more or less material from the model. And then if you kind of like how that looks, you can choose the Calculate Smoothed Mesh option, and it will try and smooth that geometry out for you to make it a lot more aesthetically pleasing and potentially easier to print should you decide to go ahead and print the model directly from this output. Now, in our case, we decided to go ahead and try and do some manual modeling instead. We really used topology to figure out where we could remove material, and then we took those basically suggestions from SolidWorks and went through a manual process to kind of create similar features using standard modeling techniques. And if we jump out of that study, we can go ahead and take a look at what the manually modeled part actually looks like. You can see that we removed some material in similar areas, like in the top part here, you'll see this hole in this kind of recessed area that passed right through, and we kind of saw that big cavity in the topology example. And then we went ahead and removed quite a bit of material using this cut that kind of sweeps through the side of this part, and then also there's another region on the bottom towards the rear of the part where we cut out a bunch more material as well. So we basically used that as a suggestion from topology, and then we just manually controlled it so we could get kind of a look that we liked a little bit better. Overall, I think you guys should take advantage of all 4 of these options that we looked at here. Topology has some great features, whether it's preserved regions, thickness control, or demold control. All of these can help you guys refine and control where topology removes material. This can ultimately lead to a result that works best for your application and your manufacturing process. And if you don't like exactly what topology spits out, that's totally fine. I think you'll find that you can use that as a guideline to just manually model and kind of simulate what topology did, but with a little bit more control using your own features. So we know what material we're going to use, and we've refined our part design so that it's going to work well in our application on our Metal X printer. Now what we've got to consider is print volume, or in this case, I should have considered center volume. So this is where I kind of made a little bit of a mistake, and I'm not afraid to tell you guys that because part of going through this is really a learning process, not only for us, but also for our customers. I am not somebody that spends a whole lot of time on our 3D printing side of things. We have a dedicated team for that. I hang out on the SolidWorks side of things, and so what I did when I was designing this part is I said, well, let me make sure that we can print this part and its given size on the Metal X, and turns out, that's no problem. But what I didn't account for was our center volume. So as part of this printing process on the Metal X, when the parts come out from being 3D printed out of stainless, we'll actually go through a series of post-processing applications that ends in a sintering oven. And when the part goes through that sintering process, we've got obviously a chamber in this sintering oven that the part has to fit within, but the parts actually shrink, sometimes up to 20% in size. And the software accounts for all of this. But what that also means is when I was looking at the size of the part in SolidWorks and trying to figure out if we could print all of this, I didn't account for the fact that we were actually going to have to scale this up a little bit. And I kind of fell into this weird gray area where the part will fit in the centering oven in its finished volume, but when you have to scale it up to account for the shrinkage, it no longer fit in the centering oven that we have. So that kind of led to a unique scenario that turned out to be a pretty fun process, and I think ultimately let us test out a couple of things that I think you guys will find pretty cool. Because the part wouldn't fit, we actually had to split it up. And so what we looked at was actually printing this in multiple pieces. And we'll talk about how we join this back together here in a little bit. But for now, I just want to talk about that split process. Once we knew that the only way we could print this part with the geometry that we had laid out, we had to decide how we were going to split this up. And luckily, SolidWorks makes this super simple. You can just use basically two commands to make this happen. You can use the split command, which will allow you to break a single body into multiple bodies. Once you've split that part up, you can just use the save bodies command to quickly save each body into its own part file. And then from there, it will actually reassemble those parts into an assembly document so that now you've got each individual file that you can print, but you can also see what those individual parts look like once they're assembled back together. And we can go ahead and take a look at kind of what this file looks like back in SolidWorks. What we'll do is we'll actually just use our rollback bar here to step through the features that we used to split this part up. We just created a simple surface extrusion here. And that surface extrusion has got some interesting features here. You'll actually notice that it takes a couple of jogs and actually creates these little indexing sections. We'll talk about fixturing here in a minute, but because we were splitting it up, we wanted a way to easily get these parts to fit exactly back together. And so we just kind of created these little intersecting regions by manipulating that surface that we're going to cut the part with. And then we use that surface along with the split feature to go ahead and just cut the part in two using that surface. Now, once that split had taken place, we now have two bodies, and from there we can just use the save bodies command, and that will actually save both of these bodies out. And that makes for a pretty easy process to just split up the individual components so that we can send them over to our Markforged printer to get them printed out. Now, once those parts were split up and printed, we had to figure out how the heck we were going to get them back together. And this was kind of fun for me because welding has been a little bit of a hobby lately. So instantly the first thing I thought of was I want to try and weld these metal printed parts back together. We're always told that these metal printed parts have the same material properties, or very similar material properties to parts that are cast or machined from billet. But I wanted to see what it was like to try and weld these components together. And this is where we got to kind of step a little bit outside the comfort zone. There's not a whole lot of documentation on this, and it's one of those things where you really need to kind of do your own research here. I'm not a certified welder or anything like that. I'm just an amateur at best. But it was something that we wanted to play around with and try and push the boundaries of. So we started off by just taking a couple of scrap pieces, and I did this several different times where I would take either scrap metal printed parts, old parts, or just the rafts that are left over when we print some of these parts out, and I would just try and weld them up. And I tried welding them with a number of different filler materials. This was all TIG welded, by the way. So I tested out a number of different filler materials. I also tried brazing. And what I would do is just kind of weld these parts together at the seams, throw them in a vise, and just hit them with a hammer and see where they break. And you can kind of see an example, those top two images there where it's silicon brazed on the left and then where it's broken on the right. And you can actually see where the brazed seam held together just fine. The part actually broke farther back into the model geometry where it switches from solid to like a sparse infill, kind of a hollowed out region. And so that was really good to see because it basically meant that the weld wasn't going to be the failure point in at least this application. So if you guys decide to go this route, I would recommend that you test it out. Try and weld up some test pieces and things like that. But if you do your homework, it does seem like this process works really, really well. You can also see in the bottom there, I just included an image of what that two-piece part looked like when it was printed out. It wasn't yet brazed together or anything like that, but those are the two raw pieces after they came out of the sintering oven. There are some things that you can do with the print settings to kind of increase the success or make this process a lot easier. One is increasing the wall thickness. So these parts have kind of a sparse infill, kind of a hollow, almost like honeycomb structure, but you do have solid walls anywhere that you have an outside face on this part. And what you can do is you can increase that wall thickness. So for welding, increasing that wall thickness definitely helps. In this case, I think we had 3 millimeters of solid material before we got to the infill. It also helps for things like post-processing, whether that's going to be drilling and tapping out holes, which in this case we did as well, or if you wanted to machine surfaces, like a post-machining operation to maybe flatten out a surface or add some additional geometry, you can use the print settings to give yourself enough material thickness to make that process possible. So like I mentioned, for this design, we decided to go ahead and TIG braze with silicon bronze. I kind of went with silicon bronze just because it let me put less heat into the part. It also seemed like it wasn't as susceptible to contamination. Sometimes the rough texture on printed parts makes it a little hard to get any contamination out before you start welding. So for me in this case, I think silicon bronze works really well because I wasn't as concerned about the strength in this joint. There isn't a whole lot of shear going through that joint. There's going to be a little bit, but it's not enough that I think brazing versus welding is really going to make a difference in my application. There's also a number of ways that you can fixture these parts. So I mentioned earlier that we kind of jogged that cut surface through the part in order to make some indexing features, and that's one way that you can help easily align these parts. Other options would also be that you could print some fixtures, whether it's metal fixtures or if you actually use some of the onyx composite materials. Those actually make really good fixturing parts. So several different options. In our case, we used those indexing features, but I also went ahead and drilled and tapped all of the holes on this part. And then I actually bolted the pump to the front face of these components. And that helped me kind of get all the holes aligned when I went to go and start brazing this part together. And then I also bolted each of the mounting holes that would actually bolt to the cylinder head of the engine. I just bolted those down to a fixture table that I've got. And that kind of made the process for getting this thing all lined up pretty easy. So once it was lined up, I went ahead and started brazing this thing out. And here's kind of what the finished results look like. Like I said, it's not perfect. I'm an amateur welder at best. Brazing is not something that I have a ton of experience with. Overall, I think the braze does work pretty well here. It doesn't flow as easily if you've got any layer lines like you see on the bottom of that part. On the top face of that part in the left image, you can actually see where it looks like it's kind of smoothed out. I actually went and just used 220 grit sandpaper and some hand files after I'd gone through and welded this together, and basically just knocked that whole face down, and it actually looks really good. It's hard to take images of like a brushed metallic material, as I've found out, but it turned out really well. You can see that on the left-hand side where all of the joint filler material has been knocked down. On the right-hand side, I didn't sand or file or anything on that brazed joint, so you can see what that raw weld actually looks like. Overall, this was a really, really fun process. There's a lot that we learned, a lot that I learned more than anything. There's so much that I wish I could kind of elaborate on. It's tough to fit all of this into just 2 30-minute sessions, so we may do some follow-up videos on this later on and post those to our YouTube page as well. But I hope you guys have enjoyed following along. I appreciate you guys joining us for this. It was a fun project to work on, and if you guys have any questions, we're happy to answer those. We'll go ahead and take some questions now. But if you guys have any follow-up questions that you think of later, be sure to reach out. We're always happy to dive in, explore your process, and see if there's something we can do to help make your process more efficient along the way.